Hello and welcome to CRE Unplugged. I'm Brad Hargraves, co-host and editor-in-chief of Thesis Driven, and I'm joined here by our good friends Nadine and Ryan Elazari. Really excited for today's conversation. We got a lot of fun things to cover, so thank all listeners for joining us here on this CRE Unplugged Thesis Driven collaboration. Nadine, Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Brad. Welcome back.
Excited to be here. So first, and I want to caveat this first topic that we're going to dive into by saying that we are recording this on the afternoon of April 21st. And when we're talking about tariffs, anything could change at any time. And what we're talking about today may be irrelevant tomorrow, will probably be irrelevant in a week, might be irrelevant in a week. But we still have to talk about it because it's on everybody's minds in the real estate world today. So what do we think the impact of tariffs are right now? Are we seeing it in the real estate world from our seats on development, on operations? What's going on right now? What are the impacts we're seeing?
Thanks, Brad. I think it's also important to note that it's 3:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the afternoon. So depending on your time zone as well, who knows what is going on. That being said, I'm by no means a tariff policy expert by any means. However, I am watching it from our seats in the commercial real estate industry. And yes, I think we're already seeing some impacts, whether or not they're wholly, in fact, due to tariffs alone, or they are just one factor, together with some other factors. But, we're already seeing rising costs, right? Home builders are already projecting an average increase per home of about $11,000. That's reported last week from Reuters, which again, who knows whether that's outdated or not. You've got earnings expectations in the cyclical industries of real estate and energy and industrial being reduced by a 65% reduction. So, that's pretty substantial as well. Again, whether that's all due in part to tariffs or not remains to be seen. And then, development delays. We've got a 14.2% reduction in housing starts for March 2025, in part due to tariffs. So, yes, we're going to see an impact. The only thing is, it depends on how long this trade war is going to go on. To your point, Brad, we don't know. I think as of an hour ago, China is still digging its heels in, warning other nations to not engage or come to an agreement with the United States. So if this goes on, if this keeps going on, we're going to keep seeing an impact on the commercial real estate industry, particularly in cost of materials, cost of housing, and developers are going to slow, if not completely halt building due to just sheer uncertainty. And so, again, I'm no expert, but we're going to feel the pinch. I'd love to know what Ryan thinks.
Yeah, Nadine, I echo a lot of what you said, especially on the development side. We're talking about projects in multifamily, high permitted areas like Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, Memphis. Their projects are now being stalled. So what's going to happen is less supply and higher rents. So it's going to negatively affect the housing market. And just when you thought the office market couldn't get any worse, well, here's the news. It's going to get worse because the first thing that goes is you have top multinational companies or top companies in general who are just not going to lease office spaces. So that's going to drive down the vacancy rates of these office buildings in the US. So really, it's not great news. And I believe the quote is, uncertainty in the real estate market creates a lot of negative reactions to the overall market. So hang on tight because we have no idea what's ahead of us. Right, Brad?
Right. It feels like, we're talking about first order impacts. We're talking about second order impacts. The first order impacts are everything just got more expensive. Lumber, steel, electrical components, it all just got more expensive. So that's going to slow down. It's going to delay projects that penciled. The few things that penciled a month ago don't pencil now. Then there's the second order impacts. of if we are seeing a broader economic slowdown.
Hmm.
And the manufacturing report that came out a couple days ago was disastrous. Manufacturer sentiment, consumer sentiment, all at post-COVID lows. Trucking data, some new trucking data
Hmm.
came out the other day. Inland Empire trucking data, Midwestern trucking data, way down. Number of
Hmm.
shipments, number of orders, bookings. That kind of stuff is those are the canaries in the economic coal mine, and those are all you know red right now. The question though is there any logic to this? Is it going to drive a reindustrialization? Are we going to see a resurgence of American manufacturing, industrial demand? Maybe not in the next few months, but it's coming down the road. This demand is coming. I mean, is there a method to the tariff madness here? Hey, Ryan, I'll start with you. Or Nadine, I'll start with you.
Like, no, Brad, I'd like to think so, and I think that might just be, optimism on my part. Listen, tariffs don't have to necessarily be bad, okay? I'm all for bolstering the local economy, right? Especially whether it's, manufacturing or whatnot. But clearly, is there a long-term strategy in play now? Is there any strategy that's being deployed right now? On its surface, it's might suggest no, but then again, I don't know. So I think it's too early to say, but it just seems like there's really no long-term strategy at play right now, and we're just the Trump administration is just throwing Hail Marys like multiple times a day, seeing what's going to stick. So, I would like to think that maybe something will pan out and things will settle and it will bolster some our local U.S. economy, especially it relates to manufacturing. But honestly, it's just too early to say right now. And based on what I'm seeing in terms of the haphazardness of the Trump administration and the way that it's deploying this, I'm skeptic. I'm really skeptical.
I don't know if you guys watch Bill Maher, but I love his segment New Rules.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how, yeah, it's great to bring manufacturing and factories back to the US, but are we really going to have Gen Zers working at those facilities? Most of them want to be, want to be
They want
influencers.
to be streamers. They want to be doing what we're
Yeah,
doing, Ryan.
exactly. They want to they love the fact that they don't have to work these like hard laboring jobs. So that gives me a lot of concern regards to that. I'm all about bringing back more work into the US, but we got to find roles that people are going to want to
Well,
take.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're a country with an unemployment rate of 4%.
Right, that too.
So, and I think most of those 4% are borderline unemployable. So I'm just looking at the picture and saying, who's going to work in these factories? Who wants to sew socks? Like
Right,
someone in Vietnam would be happy to sew socks
right.
for $2, $3 an hour. It's a far better standard of living than they had. Even if you jack up the price of socks by 10x, how many Americans want to work in the sock factory for
Hmm.
$20 an hour?
Not many.
Not
Yeah,
many.
yeah.
And I just don't see how this ends. Now, I think you could point to strategic things. It's a great article came out this morning about drone manufacturing and how even all of these American companies building drones, which are critical probably to a future war, all these companies building drones, they're all dependent on Chinese components because we
Hmm.
don't have enough manufacturing base in the US. So for that, okay, there are certain electronic components as an industry. We are going to protect that via tariffs and say, okay, even we are willing to tolerate some higher prices so we can manufacture, you know, electronic components in the US. That's critical for national defense. But like socks, why do we need to make socks here? especially if we can make them in an allied nation. I don't get
Brad,
it.
why are we getting to socks? Are you having an issue with socks these days? Are you anti-sock?
Ryan, I always have issues with socks, but like raising the price of them by an order of magnitude is not going to help my issues with my socks.
Especially when you keep losing one in the dryer, right? I mean, I
Right.
don't know where they keep going, but exactly. But you guys both raise a good point. I'd be interested to see, and you're right, who's going to want to go back to these traditional manufacturing jobs. That being said, if they are good paying jobs, I would be interested in seeing data on a regional geographic breakdown across the United States, across Gen Zers, if in fact there is anybody that would be interested in going to these jobs. If they pay well, if it enables somebody or a household to be able to start affording the basic things that they can't afford anymore in our economy. I don't know. Maybe you guys have seen these numbers and I haven't. I don't know. I haven't seen them, but I'd be interested to see.
Well, you certainly ask Gen Zers what do they want to do for a living, and it's exactly as Ryan said. I mean, they want to be influencers, they want to be, YouTube streamers, they want to be musicians. Uh, you know, Textile factory worker is not particularly high on that list. I don't think it's on that list at all. Now, that's not to say like you can't make those into or some version of manufacturing work. I mean, look, like we have a manufacturing output in the US is as high as it's ever been.
Mhm.
Manufacturing labor is pretty steady, but a lot of that's due to automation. Now, obviously, these tariffs are going to make a huge push toward more automation. They have to. I think that is a silver lining here. Is you're going to see if you're an industrial automation company right now, I think you're pretty happy with where we are. But everyone else, it's a tough situation. I want to go back though, Ryan, to something you said around uncertainty. These are building a factory, investing in industrial automation, robots. These are huge capex projects. I don't know who's just given the uncertainty. I don't know who's, putting the dollars down on the table right now and saying, hey, we are going to bet. I mean, do you see just like in real estate, talk about what we know here, has there been some retreat from risk on in terms of just looking at the uncertainty in the market right now?
I think right now people are holding tight. I think JP Morgan wrote a report saying that there's a 50-50 chance to a recession. You're seeing credit widening because people aren't, you have banks who aren't lending right now. There's too much uncertainty for anyone to take on these risks.
Yeah. I don't disagree. And I don't know how we can reindustrialize as a nation when nobody knows what's going on tomorrow, next week, let alone 4 years from now. It's a tough place to be.
Really tough place to be. I'll be interested to see how this plays out. Until then, I'm going to keep storing my money in a coffee can.
Oh, I mean, with what the dollar's doing, I mean, you're seeing yields go up and the dollar go down. That's not a good combination.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Normally,
great timing with me going to Europe in a couple of months.
yeah, totally. Oh, everything just got about 10% more expensive for you.
Yeah.
So, speaking of expenses going the other direction, one of the big topics. So we had our Thesis Driven subscriber event a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big topics that came up again and again and again as going to be one of the biggest impacts that we will see from AI on real estate, which is not materialized yet, is the decreasing cost of building technology. The cost of software, maybe not going to zero, but going pretty close to zero, where you have tools like, GPT out of the box is not bad at this, but there's specialized tools like Cursor. The other day I was building an automation, trying to move emails from one place to another, and it required a line of regex, of regular expressions. And then, that's a kind of complicated coding language that like most programmers try to avoid, and I don't know regex. And so I went to GPT and was just like, "Dear AI, please write me a line of regular expressions that does this." And it was like, take a string of text and do something with it. And it returned something to me. And if you've ever read regular expressions, they look like Greek. They're like a mix of symbols, and they're not English looking like it. So I look at this, and it's utterly unintelligible to me. But I plug it in where it's supposed to go, and I test it, and by God, it works perfectly. And here I am, script kiddie, writing code in a language I don't know. And there's all sorts of like downstream implications of this. Like if this thing breaks, I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't read it. But it's dramatically reducing the cost of software. Are we going to see like every property manager, every asset manager on Cursor, on GPT, like writing their own custom code? Is that what the future looks like? I mean, is there going to be any value in the application layer of software?
Brian, you're a resident property manager. I would love to hear your take on this first.
Very, very interesting. I definitely see it happening. If you're telling me that it's as easy as you had it, then why not, right? If you can just go into GPT and get the language provided to you, you're going to have more sophisticated asset managers out there who are going to use this to their advantage. And why not? If it makes their lives easier, if it's more efficient, if they're able to get their tasks done faster and focus on the creative and not the administrative, then yeah, by all means, keep doing, keep evolving, right? So you raise a really, really great question there.
Yeah. And Nadine, any takes?
I think it's going to okay, so you're asking about, you pose it your question in terms of property managers. Property managers traditionally, working within owner operator companies and whatnot. I'm skeptical still in terms of who might be writing code within our industry, right? To the extent that you just described it, Brad. I mean, I think certain roles are going to have to be properly incentivized, and they're going to have to be sitting in the right type of culture to foster and encourage that type of risk taking. I think that the needle on the appetite for risk in our industry is shifting when it relates to the way we work and the way we're willing to innovate and do things differently just because we have to now, right? But I think there's still a pretty big gap between people that are just kind of cosplaying and saying and talking innovation and just throwing around the word buzzwords, innovation and efficiency and AI and increasing capacity and bandwidth, and those that are actually taking the steps to do it and create the environments within their organizations that are going to foster that. And so in theory it sounds great. I just think that it's going to not be as generally and uniformly applied across all roles. That being said, I think this is a game changer for smaller organizations or startups, right? And I'm just going to use myself as an example. I've been operating on my own for the last 3 years in a multitude of capacities. I'm a commercial real estate transactional law firm. I am a strategic management consulting firm focusing on the owner operator sector, helping folks kind of redesign their operations and procedures, almost acting as like a fractional, chief innovation officer as well. I'm doing keynote speaking. I'm doing the podcast. Like I'm doing all these things as a department of one with maybe a handful of 1099 contractors working for me. So, I mean, that is a lot of buckets. And that is a lot of capacity that I'm able to cover through the use of automation and AI, completely bootstrapped, no money taken on in the last 3 years. So I think what excites me about this the most, maybe it's not the traditional roles within the companies. That's a different I think conversation, but those types of maybe would not have been founders in the past due to the high barriers of access to startup capital. Being able to bootstrap and get a company off the ground now for a fraction of the cost and in a fraction of the time. That's what excites me. that diversity of founders and product offerings and solutions that we could see come into the industry. That's where I really get excited about this, is kind of the lowering of the gates, so to speak.
So, but I think that's spot on. But let's run this out a little bit of like,
Right.
okay, the gates are lowered. It takes less activation energy. There's a lower barrier to entry to go build software. Suddenly, everybody and their dog is building software. What does
Right.
that world look like? I mean, are there any moats anymore? Like, where do those, you know, do software companies just trade at multiples like, HVAC repair companies? Because there are no moats. Anyone can go
Yeah.
start a software company.
Well, exactly. I think you're going to still have to couple it with best practice. Okay, so if you're an organization, you're out there searching for a certain type of software or whatever, right? You're still going to have to employ certain best practices when it comes to evaluating solutions or technologies or applications. And so I think that you still need to go hand in hand. If you're going to have an increase, an influx in the number of possible solutions out there, then you're still going to, you maybe have to revisit your best practices in terms of evaluating technology, right? I mean, all of these organizations have been evaluating technology that's been kind of, let's say, traditionally built or developed over the last so many years. So now, revisit those. Take into account that you're going to have some newer applications or solutions on the market that maybe have not been found in a traditional incubator or whatnot, but that could still be a really good solution. Maybe you as an owner operator invest in them. Maybe you acquire them, right? And then you kind of take it from there.
Maybe you
Um, you
incubate
know,
your own. Maybe you
incubate
say,
your
hey,
own.
I'm going
Exactly.
to, the value is not in the writing the code. It is understanding what
Exactly.
the code should do and how that, what the report should look like and what it should integrate with and all that stuff. So if I don't know, pick a multifamily owner operator, pick like a Cortland or a, Hines or whatever. I'm not, I'm like, why buy software off the shelf when I can't control it? When I can hire a couple of my own script kiddies to like go on GPT and, build the thing I want. And okay,
This
you
is
have to
what
hire
it's,
another
yeah,
person in DevOps or security to make sure that
yeah.
like you're not leaving, gaping holes for hackers to come in. But like I think that the reward seems to outweigh the risk, and I think it's a threat for the entire prop tech ecosystem.
100%.
A
I think,
hundred. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Go for it, Ryan.
VCs are gonna have to kind of look back and see how they're going to invest in these type of companies now. They have to look at funds now, pursue later stage bootstrap founders who provide revenue instead of looking at early stage startups. You see a lot of bootstrap owners now looking to get acquired a lot earlier, and shopping their product a lot earlier. And then you're seeing a lot of these builders being bolder. So technical founders are going solo. They might have like 2 to 3 people on their team. So it's definitely changing everything that you're seeing right now. I'll give you an example. You have Fathom.video, who was one of the premier AI powered like Zoom note taker. 1 million users, zero funding. And they just did it with a very small and lean team.
It's a great tool. I use Fathom. You in fact kicked my Fathom note taker out of the room,
If
since
you
it
asked
follows
me
me around
to, Brad,
everywhere.
I
I
would just
did.
like to say I wouldn't kick somebody out of a room just that easily. So yeah.
It is normalizing, by the way, just a total aside. The prevalence of note takers is
Oh yeah.
normalizing kicking things out of rooms. Like, I don't think I even knew how to remove someone from a Zoom call until everyone started bringing note takers, and sometimes like you don't want the note taker, so you got to kick the note taker out. So now we all know how to kick people out of video conferences. It's great,
Thanks to note takers.
thanks to note
Thanks.
takers.
Exactly. This also sparks something else in my mind, right? In the industry, there's a lot of fear still, right, about AI taking people's jobs, right? Let's in the and if and let's just be frank, there will be certain roles and skill sets that are being done by humans today that will be more aptly suited for automation or AI powered tools in the near or mid future. And so people are like, well, we're going to lose jobs. Yeah, but I also think that there's a really great opportunity there, as you said, Brad, if a lot of organizations perhaps put up their own incubators within their organizations. And so you've got a lot of really curious people. And so you can take certain roles that are done by humans today, take those people to the extent that they're interested or whatever, put them in an in-house incubator lab. These people are best suited to understand the problems of the organization and say, have at it. You used to do this and it sucked and it killed or inhibited any joy that you probably had as a human. So why don't you go over here and help us start up this new innovation lab or incubator lab and try to come up with some applications for us as an organization. So I think the possibilities are endless, truly endless.
The irony of all of this is so many of the big real estate firms spun up these venture arms, incubation shops. They got really into technology about 24 months too early. And they all spun these up in 2020, 2021. It was a ZERP phenomenon, zero interest rate.
Mhm.
They all got like whacked in 22 and 23 when rates popped. A lot of these companies went under. They all retreated. Not all of them, a lot of them, 90% of them retreated. Ironically, just with like now is the time. All these strategics, all of these big real estate operators should be spinning up. Now it's obvious software development dramatically reducing in cost. Now is the time to be spinning these things up, just when the political wind shifted in the wrong direction for them. It's a great irony.
Uh, Extraordinary, great irony. Extraordinary. I know. I know. But
And I'm sure there's
wildly.
some laid off heads of innovation, some laid off venture folks from big real estate strategics who are just listening and cursing under their breath at this episode. Like, now
Yeah,
is the time to be doing it.
yeah, probably. I last year I met a real estate operator back in Canada, and he told me that he was able to hire 4 data scientists onto his team to build new products into their asset management team because the Canadian government was helping to subsidize those data scientists,
Yeah.
right? So imagine if that was the case in the US, or just being able to create these bootstrapping these new products like we've been talking about. I mean, it's a game changer.
It totally is. And like what took 4 data scientists 3 years ago, I got a dude in Bangladesh that can do in 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
like it's a different world. It's a different world out there right
great sitcom.
now.
Loved it. Loved it.
Let's talk a little bit about The Office, remote work.
Not the show.
Not the show.
Okay.
We can talk about the show if you want. Great show.
20th anniversary. All right.
Oh, wow. It's been 20 years.
I know.
Wow.
We're old.
Uh, there's been a lot of just attempts at return to office, retreats from return to office. And it feels like a lot of organizations are kind of settling into this hybrid zone of, we're going in 2 to 3 days a week. Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Wednesday, maybe Monday. Is there anything that's going to shake us from this? It feels like there was always something on the horizon that may get people back into the office. Feels like all the bullets have been fired, other than maybe a depression, which might be coming. But like, are there any bullets left for return to office, or are we where we are?
I don't see that being the case. You have 68% of companies right now offering some sort of flexibility. And one of my main arguments about this is, if I'm a company and I want to hire the best talent, I understand about collaboration. I understand about being in the same office and having that camaraderie and like having that mentorship with the younger generation of members. But if I could hire the best of the best and do it with them working remotely, why not? I mean, that's my main argument in all of this. I want to get the best people working for me. So I'm going to embrace the virtual work?
I think the traditional model, 5 days a week in the office, 9 to 5, whatever your time is, as a mandate, as a rule of thumb across all industry and sectors, is dead. It is dead. And I think
Yeah.
anybody that's trying to revert back to that after a once in a century seismic event like COVID is just got their head in the sand. Now, that being said, there are still going to be instances and times in which being in the office for more than once per a day or week or whatever, even 5 days a week might be appropriate, right? And I think now the shift is that companies have the freedom to be able to define what works best for them, their corporate goals, and their workforce. Workforce was never even a really factor to be considered before. You want the job, you want to get paid, you got to come do it the way that we're doing it, where we say. Okay, things have shifted. It's just not so binary anymore. There's nuance to it, which isn't something that we necessarily always do so well with in this industry and in our economy. And so people now have the freedom to get creative, to ask the questions. What does work mean to us? What does doing the best work mean to our organization? We're the best types of people for us to employ to do that. And then you have the freedom to design that and then go find the space that best supports you. And so I'm laughing that we're still having this like, when, some folks are still saying, when are we going to get back to the way it was? It's over. It's gone, right? Like get with the times, catch up with it, decide what's going to work best for your organization. Maybe your organization needs to shift entirely and then go from there. But I just think gone are the days of one size fits all.
So I'm going to say something a little controversial and tie two of the topics we've discussed together here. I think tariffs are partially about return to office and are about these white collar, blue collar dynamics. Because imagine you are a service worker, a factory worker, a maintenance worker. You went back to the office second half of March 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this whole debate is offensive. That people with these bullshit email jobs, are talking about how if you want to have the best talent, you got to let people work from home. And I think there is this macro movement. Maybe I'm too plugged in to social media and the conversations that are happening on Twitter. But I think there is a real societal movement to destroy the email jobs, to destroy the jobs that don't need to be in a given place at a given time because people are working with their hands. I'm not saying that's right, but I think there is a real social movement that has something to do with the fact that there are a class of Americans that have to commute every day. And there's a class of Americans who don't. And that is a new kind of inequality that we don't really have any terminology around. We don't really have any data around that kind of inequality. It's about time. It's about flexibility. It's not about money. But like, I think a lot of people are looking at folks with these email jobs. And you see these videos, these TikToks go viral of like, my life as a product manager at Facebook.
Those are cringe.
They generate so much anger. And I think an element of that is resentment against the third or so of Americans who have the option to work from home or have some hybrid or remote work schedule. And I do believe, even though I think the tariffs are completely misguided and will not work in any way, shape, or form, they're a manifestation of some of that anger. which is a form of class anger. It's not totally class. Does that make any sense?
100%. I have never heard it phrased that way before, but it makes total sense the way that you just said it, Brad. And I want to pose a question to you, okay? In this world of class anger, right? Let's say the trade war blows up in America's face and in Trump's face, okay? And we don't have this return to industrialist America and the return to the manufacturing jobs or whatnot. I see, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people where we have this entire class of people, like you just said, right? Um, that are either are the service workers or they are they're the non-email workers, right? Combine that with the fact that we have this almost new form of literacy. Let's call it AI literacy. I just made that up, and I know that's kind of bullshit because it's embedded in almost everything. But to your point, right? You just gave this great example of, with a little bit of know-how, you went into GPT and were able to come up with an automation plugin, to automate your emails to make it do something, whatever. I believe that we should start investing certain resources into educating the masses on the basics of artificial intelligence. And I don't have much behind this, but but for the reason that this certain class of people will continue to be left behind and will continue to feel overlooked and will continue to feel like they've lesser and lesser of opportunities than the Facebook project manager. I'm not going to say it's going to close the gap. I'm not that naive. But that being said, I really do think that there needs to be some concerted effort to be able to bring along everybody. And then let's see what they do with that, right? Let's see what type of jobs can emerge from that. I don't know. So it's a little tangential to what you just described, but what you just said makes total sense, complete and total sense. And I get that. I completely get that.
Yeah, I mean, I look, I built General Assembly. I'm like as big of a believer in training and whatever those trades are. And I think we have to be strategic about what those, what trades, what skills we are training them for. But I guess like my macro societal point is like the office served as this like basically skeuomorphic layer that allowed everyone to pretend that we're all sort of doing the same work. That like the office is fundamentally laid out in a manufacturing frame. Like you have the
Yeah.
boss's offices on the windows, you have the open pit where like you
Yep.
have cubicles where the people work. And like it's fundamentally it was the originated from a factory layout. Like
Hmm.
there's no reason why an office necessarily needs to be laid out like that, other than that is an appropriate way for an assembly line factory to be laid out. So the fact that everyone was going into these kind of factory-like settings um, provided a certain leveling, a certain allowed us to kind of smudge the layers of the fact that we are all fundamentally doing different work now, and a lot of this work doesn't even need to be done in an office at all, and doesn't to many Americans even look like work. And when COVID blew that up and showed that no, in fact, some people do need to be going into a physical place every day, and some people don't. I think it got things got a little wackadoodle.
There were a lot of executives I've been in roundtables with that were really angry about this. They said they in their 20s they killed themselves. They were at the office. Why aren't the younger generation coming to the office every day like I did? They felt wronged by this. They killed themselves. Why aren't the younger folks
Right.
killing themselves? And so
So
so I definitely agree with your statement. Just to go into the whole how this hybrid midweek is going to factor into real estate. You're seeing a lot of downtown areas getting impacted by this. Fast casual restaurants are getting impacted. because you're not seeing that many people at the office. Also, a lot of retail chains are getting impacted. Like if you see, like there's been now a lot of people wearing Aloe and Lululemon when they're going to the office, or working from home. You're seeing Brooks Brothers and Jose Bank. They're getting affected because people aren't wearing business casual clothing especially when they go to the office now. So that to me is definitely a changing trend.
100%. So
I'm curious though, to your point though, Brad, I mean, do we think class anger is going to be enough to disrupt hybrid work? I mean, like listening, it's
so
almost like saying, yeah, go ahead.
only through second order. I mean, it's a really interesting
Yeah,
question. I think only through second order effects, if the tariffs are going to blow up the economy and send unemployment to 10%, and the easiest way to determine who gets laid off is who's not willing to come into the office.
true.
Not
Very
directly
interesting.
A to B, but I think it was a pretty undirected general anger as well.
No, I think it's spot on. I also wonder if it's our modern days version of when back in your day, I used to have to trudge through 6 feet of snow to get to school or whatnot. I wonder if
I
we'll be
think
the
that's
ones
what it is.
telling.
It's
I think
totally,
it's totally what
totally.
it is. Yeah.
So before we get to our last topic, which is a very fun one, we're going to do a draft. Before we get to our draft, I would like to invite David Abrams from HILO to come and share a little bit about the state of the work and office world.
We're back talking to David Abrams, CEO of HILO and host of the Tenant Experience Network. David, welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to see both of you. Hope you're both
You as
well.
well.
Yeah,
You too,
awesome.
David. Thanks for joining us again. So, David, we're always happy to have you swing by and give us the latest updates and trends and happenings going on in the tenant experience world. So, please tell us what fabulous news do you have for us today?
Well, first of all, a little bit podcast related. I'll share a little bit on that front, and then maybe we can just chat about a blog that we just recently released and the topic of that. So, on the podcast side, we just completed an episode, should be out beginning of next week, with Jordan Menashe, principal and CEO of Menashe Properties, family-owned business, 50 years in the industry. Really interesting conversation, and just I think a further evidence and a proof point that office is far from dead. In fact, they're buying. They've been buying consistently over the last several years. And it was just an interesting conversation. Jordan talked a lot about the evolution of office as he sees it, the importance of what he calls personal touch, which I think we can all agree to, and just how important experience is, and that's truly an opportunity for a smaller owner operator to really differentiate. So really love that conversation. Got a couple of interesting guests coming up. So just before I've even recorded this week, we've got two in the books. James Nelson, author, podcast host, investor, and now principal and the managing partner of head of Avis & Young's U.S. investment sales. So that's pretty exciting, out of New York. I'm sure he'll have a lot to share with us. He's also been a serial investor himself, and has led two different funds, over 350 million in capitalization. So really, really loves commercial real estate and certainly the office category. And then lastly, my guest later this week, which will bring us into a global sort of perspective of the industry, is Yara Barbari. She's based in Dubai, and she leads workplace strategy across the Middle East for JLL. So, going global, bring a really interesting perspective, I'm sure, to the conversation, and looking forward to that.
Very cool. For our listeners, if you have not listened in yet to the 10 Experience Network podcast, David brings some of the best guests on. And I'm not just saying that because HILO is our sponsor, truly, as you can, testament to what he just said. So I will certainly be tuning in to these and really looking forward to it, David.
It's interesting. 80 episodes later, it never gets old. It never gets boring. It never gets tired. We're continuously attracting and engaging with new guests. And it's a privilege. It's just a lot of fun and a great opportunity for me to learn, and to share stories. So love doing that. In terms of learning, we are lifelong learners, at HILO. And we're always thinking about how the world is changing and how the space is evolving. So I know that we've talked a lot about the evolution of office, but we just shared a new blog. We called it How CX is Changing the Workplace. And we introduced this notion of shifting from what we call obligation to attraction. And it's different language in and around the conversation about the return to work and mandates, which we think are, flawed and wrong. But it really, I think, is a succinct way of saying it's not about people feeling they have to come to work. It's about creating a work experience that attracts people to the physical workplace. And I think that's what the brightest and best are all now thinking about. And I'm sure, and I know it's coming up in conversation on your podcast as well.
Yeah, we just had a conversation just talking about how mandates are not working and people are really embracing hybrid work and especially midweek work. And to get people back, they need to really feel like there's a reason for them to be back. And I think you're a testament of that with the HILO application.
Yeah, for us, it's a combination. Our tech is only one part of the story. The other big part, obviously, is the whole notion of hospitality, and then just being very customer centric in terms of design, in terms of experience, in terms of the way in which we engage all of our customers, the tenants and buildings. And I think, I'll continue to say my feeling is that this transcends all classes of real estate. This is not just a story for, the brightest and best of commercial real estate, the trophy properties. This is an opportunity for all buildings, no matter what class, no matter what size, no matter what location, to continue to differentiate. And I think we're going to see, my belief is that there are going to be buildings that will continue to emerge and owners of real estate that will continue to emerge as leaders. And it's going to be all asset classes, all sizes, all types, all locations, because they understand that it is now about those three pillars, how technology can enable hospitality and just deliver great experience. So we're super excited. And again, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your ongoing conversation and your journey. And can't wait to continue on next time as well.
Thank you, David. For those of you that haven't read David's latest blog post, I highly recommend you do on the role of customer experience. I very much enjoyed also your mention of the book Unreasonable Hospitality, a book that I too have been moved by tremendously. I think just as you were as well, David. So excellent blog post. Thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure. We'll see you next time.
See you next
time. Thank you,
David.
All right, so let's pick this back up. Let's wrap up. And to do that, we are going to go into our last section, which is a draft of real estate categories. So it's going to be a snake draft, like we're drafting a fantasy football team. We are each going to draft 5 categories, I think, of commercial real estate that if we were going out and building our fantasy real estate investment firm, what food groups are we going to bet on? And we are going to use my own database's categorization, Thesis Driven Developer Database. We have 42 different real estate categories. Not promoting the database, it's cool. It's a cool resource, but I mostly it's a great way to segment and provide the basis for what we're doing here, which is we are drafting categories of real estate investment. So just to give you, some examples of what we're talking about here, we have 7 different categories of multifamily. So we could say, okay, multifamily, ground up, core, LIHTC, workforce housing. We could say senior housing, student, go into commercial and office, life science, urban office, standalone retail, suburban office. Not sure why anyone would pick that, but it's there. Marinas, historic tax credits, OpCo, PropCo, pref equity. We have pretty much everything in here, and we are going to do our draft. So it's a snake style draft. So the last person to pick, we'll pick twice, and then we'll go back around. Everyone understand the rules? We'll stop when we each have 5, and then we'll see what we each got.
I would like the record to reflect this is the first time I've done a snake style draft. Clearly, this was Ryan and Brad's idea. I've never done a draft before, but Actually, no, that's a lie.
We're having.
I did a draft before, and I just like picked willy-nilly, and I ended up winning the draft. So who knows? Maybe
Oh,
the
you're
I'll
one
get
of
the same
those.
luck this time. I am one of those.
Oh,
Clearly, we need to get you into a fantasy football league, fantasy baseball league. So Nadine,
All right,
with
let's
that,
do
would you
this.
like to kick us off? Pick your first category.
Ooh, I'm going with data centers.
Ooh, data centers. Good one off the board first. So remember,
Thank you.
we're building a real
Can you
estate.
tell us why?
Listen, data centers aren't going anywhere, right? I mean, like, yeah. I mean, we've got this great interview coming up on CRE Unplugged with Josh Hullum that we just did, executive director of construction at Phineas Capital. And, he's telling us how, 4 megawatts 5 years ago was considered a feat. 70 megawatts today is considered a feat, but we're seeing in announcements of 1.8 gigawatts on the horizon. So artificial intelligence, data centers are not going anywhere. So I am betting on data centers.
All right, first off the board is data centers. I think I'm next in the order.
Yeah.
I am going to go with covered land.
Oh,
They're not making any more
good
land.
one.
Not making any more land.
That's a good one. I had that on my backups.
Ryan, you got to pick twice.
so as a fantasy nerd, I broke it down into tiers 1, 2, and 3.
Oh my
Of
gosh.
course you did.
So I'm really hoping I don't have to go to tier 3 because that's no bueno. But for my third pick, I'm going to go with workforce housing. You got a high demand supply gap, rent stability, a lot of political support. I don't know if you heard, but Mayor Adams in New York, he just invested $400 million into workforce housing. So it's definitely a strong play. My next pick would probably be a single family rental.
I was going to take that.
You've got suburban migration and institutional backing, makes it really scalable. And then you've got a lot of tech-enabled management platforms like Roofstock that's really making it a lot easier for you to manage your SFRs.
Took mine.
Oh,
He
sorry.
took mine too, Brad. That was my next one. All right. Am I up? Am I up?
No, it's Snake. He picked twice, so it goes back to me, and then goes back to you.
Oh.
Nadine. It
I
bounces.
clearly told you guys I have no idea what snake means. All right, let's keep going.
So I'm going to go for my next one with historic tax credits. One of the
I
most
love that.
stable, no-brainer.
Yeah.
Doesn't scale very well, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm not Blackstone here. I'm just building my own little PE shop. So I'm going to go with historic tax credits.
Nice.
Nadine, now you're up. You picked twice now.
Okay. I picked twice now. Okay. I'm going manufactured housing. Might be a bit of a gamble with the current tariffs. But that being said, I'm going to roll the dice on manufactured housing, especially with the lack of affordable housing that we keep talking about, as well as the lack of land. I am excited to see where manufactured housing is going. So I'm going to take that. And together with that, I'm going adaptive reuse.
Ooh, nice. Cool.
I'm getting the hang of this, guys.
Getting the hang
Look at
of
me,
it.
I'm playing. I'm playing draft, guys.
I
Great.
know. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
It's amazing. All right. So for my next one, I am going to go with opportunity zones.
Good pick.
Yeah, why
Brad.
not? It layers onto anything. When
yeah.
you combine historic tax credits and opportunity zones, you gotta
Very
find
solid. Very solid.
I'm going to go really safe here and go with logistics.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Industrial REITs have outperformed almost every index in the past 10 years. So I'm going to play it safe. I like my first two picks. I want to go safe third. My next pick, going to go back to affordable housing. You got a lot of government supported rents. It's recession resistance. But I think what's most important about affordable housing is location and speed really matters in building those.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
I got to pick retail. I got to pick retail. A lot of people in New York, it's like it can be so hit or miss, but like you're building standalone boxes on the side of some suburban highway, renting it triple net lease to Dutch brothers, like that's a great business. So
I had it on my backup list.
I'm going to go with standalone retail as my
Solid.
second to last pick. Nadine, your last two picks.
My last two? Okay. I'm going senior housing.
Good one.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm going senior housing, guys. I feel solid about this one. And then I'm going life sciences. I know it's been a bit variable in the last few years, but I actually think we're not going to see life sciences going anywhere for the near future. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in the life sciences sector. So I'm going senior housing and life sciences.
Nice. Yeah, I'm surprised it took this long for life sciences to come off the board. I know it's been hit or miss lately, but it's a good sector. For my last one, I am going to go with a niche among niches, multi-generational housing. I'm a big fan of multi-generational housing. I think there needs to be a lot more of it. The developers who are doing it are doing really well. Did a profile on Scott Choppin of Urban Pacific Group. It's all they do. Hundreds of units of multi-generational housing. Absolutely love the category.
Love it.
If Nadine took adaptive reuse, does that also go in with hotel to resi conversions?
No, you can do hotel to resi.
Okay, so that would be my last pick. I actually went to a hotel resi conversion when I was in LA a couple of months ago, Le Parc at Melrose, and I got to tell you, they did a great job.
Fancy.
And they're getting high ADRs with and being in like the center of WeHo. It's amazing.
Nice.
So let's run this down. Nadine, your private equity firm invests in data centers, manufactured housing, adaptive reuse, senior housing, and life science.
Yes, we do.
Ryan's, your private equity firm invests in workforce housing, single family rental, logistics, affordable housing, and hotel to resi. And mine, covered land, historic tax credits, opportunity zones, retail, and multi-generational housing. Got some good firms here. I think we should revisit this in a year and see.
Let's do it.
See how we're each performing here in our fantasy real estate private equity firm.
Thanks for letting me play draft, guys. This was fun.
Thanks for playing, and it's a fun conversation as always. And I really do want to thank you, Nadine, Ryan, for having me here and for joining in the discussion, and to all of our listeners for this CRE Unplugged Thesis Driven collaboration. Thank you so much.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank Brad Hargraves of Thesis Driven for moderating an awesome episode and for teaching me how to, I don't think it's called play draft, but I'm going to keep saying, teaching me how to play a snake style draft. To my co-host, Ryan Alizari. And again, I am Nadine Ezzi. Please rate, review, and subscribe us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And to learn more about us, you can find us at www.creunplugged.com and Brad at thesisdriven.com.
Keep your conversations real and unplugged. See you next time.